Well, welcome back. Wednesday, February 5th, 2020. The president has been acquitted. Our long national nightmare is over. We'll talk about that in a few moments. Mitt Romney was the sole Republican vote against acquitting the president, and we'll talk about that in a few moments as well. First, the durables. I never again want to hear a Democrat lament how partisan Washington has become. I never again want to hear a Democrat talk about the divisiveness of our politics. I never again want to hear the likes of Jeff Flake speak about how bipartisanship is dead and politics has become too much of a zero-sum game or a blood sport. I do want a reporter to go up to Joe Biden and ask him what he thought of the Speaker of the House, given what he said ever and oh so sincerely at John McCain's funeral. Let's remind Joe Biden, whose eulogy of John McCain was featured everywhere high and fancy, including the elite Town and Country magazine, said exactly this, and I quote, this is Joe Biden. During the long debates in the 80s and 90s, I would go sit next to John, next to his seat, or he would come on the Democratic side and sit next to me. I'm not joking. We'd sit there and talk to each other. I came out to see John. We were reminiscing around it. It was 96, about to go to the caucus. We both went into our caucus, and coincidentally, we were approached by our caucus leaders with the same thing. Friend, doesn't look good, you sitting next to John all the time. I swear to God, Joe said. Same thing was said to John by his caucus leader. Doesn't look good, you sitting next to Joe all the time. That's when things began to change for the worse in America in the Senate, Joe said. That's when it changed. What happened was, at those times, it was always appropriate to challenge another senator's judgment, but never appropriate to challenge their motive. When you challenge their motive, it's impossible to get to go. If I say you're going to do this because you are being paid off, or you are doing it because you're not a good Christian, or this or that or the other thing, it's impossible to reach consensus. Think about it in your personal lives. All we do today is attack the oppositions of both parties, their motives, not the substances of their argument. This was the mid-90s. Began to go downhill from there. The last day John was on the Senate floor, what was he fighting to do? He was fighting to restore what you call regular order. Just start to treat one another again like we used to. Biden went on. You know, John and I were both amused, and I think Lindsay was at one of these events where John and I received 2 prestigious awards, where the last year I was vice president and one immediately after, for our dignity and respect that we showed to one another. We received an award for civility in public life. Allegheny College puts this award out every year for bipartisanship. John and I looked to each other and said, what the heck is going on here? Not a joke. I said to Senator Flake, that's how it's supposed to be. Close quote. Well, is sitting on your hands at a State of the Union with the president of the opposing party rattling off great statistics about America, honoring the parents of dead victims of terrorism, or Tuskegee Airmen, or giving a Presidential Medal of Freedom, or speaking of planting trees for the environment, or giving little urban area girls educational freedom, is that not bipartisan enough? Is that not civility? Is that not decency? Now, what of the Speaker of the House ripping up the official copy of the State of the Union on national television? Sorry, international television. For a moment when I saw that, I thought of William Lloyd Garrison, the great journalist standing in Boston and publicly ripping up the U.S. Constitution, saying it was a pact with hell. Ultimately, Abraham Lincoln would school Garrison on how wrong he was. And granted, the Constitution is not a State of the Union, but it is a symbol of American democracy. It is an American institution. And when you rip the whole thing up, you rip the whole thing up. You rip the wheat as well as the tares. You rip up the tribute to the Mueller family and the celebration of minority unemployment and the killing of mass murdering terrorists and the salute to the Tuskegee Airmen, as much as you rip up tax cuts. You rip up a little part, but really a big part of America. And you tell us the president has no respect for fill in the blank, his fellow Americans, the Constitution, the presidency, the Congress, you name it. The president doesn't show respect? I want to say shame on Nancy Pelosi. But shame only works for those who have it, and what she did was shameless. I'm put in mind of the line by Abraham Joshua Heschel, the worst form of shame is having none. How dare she? How dare the Democrats who support and cheer and celebrate this? What was so gosh darn wrong with the president's address last night that it should have been seen and taken on all the moral opprobrium of a pact with hell? I said this yesterday and I'll say it again today. What is wrong with standing up for the American common or ordinary man? The person who cherishes his freedom, believes that work and industry are important, believes in fairness, hates crime, hates tyranny, dislikes war if it is unnecessary, but is willing to support it if it is, believes in alliances with like-minded countries, but despises other countries, not because they are other countries, but when and if and because they govern by the doctrines of less freedom and less fairness. The American common or ordinary man who thinks equality is based on notions of our inequality before God and trusts that truth will govern not only our business and retail transactions, but our relationships with those that govern us. What's wrong with supporting someone who supports that and us? Don't like border security? Fine. Some do. Some do because they believe that America should be, like every other country in the world, sovereign and have control of its borders. Some do it because they want less crime. Some do it because they want more national security from potential terrorists. Some do it to protect the American worker and despise the suppression of wages of actual tax-paying Americans. Some do it for a mix of reasons. Some do it for this articulated reason, quote, "We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, and unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully to become immigrants into this country." Close quote. That's Barack Obama. Worth shredding that notion too, Nancy? For years, you have heard me quote Thomas Jefferson from his first inaugural. Every difference of opinion is not a difference of principle. We have called by different names brethren of the same principle. We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists. Who in the Democratic Party believes that anymore? Even as they have fundraising dinners called Jefferson Jackson dinners to honor Thomas Jefferson. No, we are no longer a polity and country of different opinions. We are, because of the neo-secessionists, a polity and country of different principles. And that bodes horribly. Now you know what some say and why some say we are in a soft civil war. Precisely because, as in the 1830s and 1840s and 1850s and 1860s, half of this country lost the Jeffersonian idea, lost its principles. We became a house divided, as Abraham Lincoln put it. And how did Abraham Lincoln put it? This was in 1858, running for the U.S. Senate. Quote, "Agitation has not only not ceased, but has constantly been augmented. In my opinion, it will not cease until a crisis shall have been reached and passed. A house divided against itself cannot stand. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other." Close quote. Good word, that, agitation, the word he uses. We've used it here before. It's a good one. Yesterday we heard callers using the word chaos and frenzy. Same thing. Agitation is Lincoln's word, and we should probably stick with that. But Lincoln concluded that famous speech this way, and I urge its counsel on us right now. And I remind, he was addressing his fellow Republicans, members of the newly formed Republican Party. He said, quote, "Of strange, discordant, and even hostile elements we gathered from the four winds and formed and fought the battle through, under the constant hot fire of disciplined, proud, and pampered enemies. Did we brave all then to falter now? Now, when that same enemy is wavering, dissevered, and belligerent? The result is not doubtful. We shall not fail. If we stand firm, we shall not fail. Wise counsels may accelerate, or mistakes delay it, but sooner or later, the victory is sure to come." Close quote. An instrument of our great American institutions, speaking to nothing less than honoring fellow Americans, a love letter to them, a love letter, was torn up, as if, as I say, it were a pact with hell. And right now I'm put in mind of nothing so much of, not William Lloyd Garrison, but Saul Alinsky, who in the epigraph to his book Rules for Radicals wrote exactly this, quote, lest we forget at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to the very first radical, from all our legends, mythology, and history, the first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did it so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer. Well done, Democrats. I hope you enjoy the kingdom you're trying to build. My prediction, every house in it will fall, or should. I'm Seth Leibsohn, 602-508-0960. We'll be right back. I'd like to take a moment to tell you about my friends at Guns Etc. They are true American patriots. They strongly support our president, and they have over 10,200 square feet of firearms and firearm accessories. Please take my advice and stop by their store, which is a symbol of American freedom, or visit them at gunsetcetera.com and have access to over $350 million in firearms merchandise.